So, what are the 7 deadly sins? That's the Googling God question for today. And the answer, well, it's a film. It's also a cartoon series, but the title comes from an age-old piece of Christian thinking. And it's answering the question, what are the roots of sins? Evagrius Ponticus, living in the late 300s, was the one who categorised the sins. So he thought about the subjects and listed 7-8 roots of evil. And Evagrius had a student who was called John Cassian, and he thought about them a bit more, refined them, wrote them down in his own book, which is entitled The Institutes. And this is how the cardinal sins, the capital sins, became part of the Western Church. And this is what the 7 capital, 7 cardinal, 7 root, 7 deadly sins are. They are pride, greed, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth. Sorry, I just can't get Sid the Sloth out of my mind from Ice Age. But that's it. Deadly sins: pride, greed, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth. Being lazy. So the 7 deadly sins, the 7 cardinal sins, was first thought of around about AD 400. And that was then. What about now? And for our topic to talk around, I'd like to just steer us down a slight tangent, a slight side alley. Because I want to say, well, do times change? And in this more modern world, how would we now rate the top sins? What do you see as the top league of sins? Because things have changed. There's a sway in society. Take, for instance, pride. Pride is one of the 7 deadly sins of AD 400. But nowadays, it seems that if you are bold enough, you can just assert yourself as right, and as long as you've got volume and force and pride, you change things. How about being caught? Would we replace one of the top sins with being caught? How about doing a U-turn? Changing your direction? So my question for you to mull over in the group is this: of the old 7 cardinal, the main categories of sins, which were pride, greed, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth, which of these is no longer regarded as a problem in today's society, and what's been put there in its place? So if you have a think about, I don't know, politicians, business leaders, authors, social media stars, those sort of people, how are they reported in the media? When they fall down, what did they fall down from? So which sins are now downplayed, and what upright behaviours are vilified these days and made out to be sins in the eyes of the world? In your groups, you've been talking about modern morality, which is a framework based upon the thinking of some people. Now, even if it's a group of people over a period of time, they're not necessarily going to get it right, and it's a shaky basis for your life. Let's have a look at what God says. God, who's omniscient, he knows everything, he's outside of time, he's able to see how all the consequences go together. God, the designer, the creator of the world, surely he knows best. So what does he say about the problem of sin? What does he say about what are the 7 deadly sins? Well, does it surprise you? The Bible doesn't mention the 7 deadly sins at all. But it does talk about sin. Let's go back right to the very beginning. And when God created the world, he said that it was good. And he doesn't stand for anything short of perfection. It was good. Everything was good. We have a picture of a beautiful garden at the start. There's no pain, no suffering, no arthritis, no cancer, no COVID. Everything is fine until sin. And sin separates us, all of mankind, from God, because he is holy and cannot truck the imperfection, the stain of sin. And let's not kid ourselves. We have all sinned. Paul points that out in Romans. He says, all have sinned. All have fallen short of the glory of God. And don't think that lovely Jesus downplays sin either. In fact, he highlights the problem. He raises the bar almost. He says, you've heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Essentially, if you think it, you've done it. You have sinned. That's a high bar. He goes on. He says, if your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out, throw it away. It's better that you lose one of your members than your whole body be thrown into hell. Do you think Jesus really meant that? Is that really the severity of the problem of sin? Is it that bad? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'm going to tell you a very short story, illustration. It might turn your stomach, so if you're a bit queasy, put your fingers in your ears. And when I take my fingers out, it's okay. Trappers in northern Canada have, in the past, come back to a trap that they set, and there was nothing there, just blood on the snow. Because the animal realised that it was ensnared, it was going to die, and it would be better to chew off its paw and live free than die in the trap. Yes, sin is like the trap that will not let go. It is that much of a problem. But there is a great, great remedy. We know that everybody's sinned. We know that Jesus doesn't downplay sin. We know that Jesus stated and held to that he is going to come again and judge us and take those who accept him to be with him. But even 20, 30 years after Jesus had died and risen again, there must have been people saying, well, do you know what? I've sinned, but I haven't been struck down by lightning, so I don't think it's going to happen. Jesus' friend Peter wrote an answer to this. He says, don't overlook this one fact, beloved, that with the Lord, one day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. The Lord is not slow to fulfill his promise, as some count slowness, but is patient towards you, not wishing that anyone should perish, but that all should reach repentance. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief, and then the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved, and the earth and the works that are done on it will be exposed. To put that into other words, Peter is saying, no, there will be judgment, but Jesus is giving you all the chances he can. Chances, opportunities to turn to him. Because it was his death on the cross that paid for the punishment of all sins. But we need to ask Jesus for forgiveness. And if we don't, if we choose not to, then we face the judgment, we face having the penalty of the sins that we committed, which is only fair. And whilst we're waiting for Jesus to return, we are still living in this world that it is affected by sin. Paul talks about creation being in bondage to decay, to corruption because of sin. We have natural disasters. We weren't supposed to have those. We have cancer. That wasn't supposed to be the way. All of these things are because of the side effects of sin. It's a real problem. We can't save ourselves from this problem of sin, but Jesus can. How great! How great is that? To know you're forgiven, to have a future, to have a restored relationship with the God who made us. That is what's on offer through Jesus. So, the question, what are the 7 deadly sins, was a good starting question, but a bad one to end with. Because I don't like the idea that it gives the hints, the misunderstanding that there are maybe only a large handful of sins that really matter. All sins are a problem. All sins are deadly. But, and how good is this? They don't have to be, because Jesus has done something about it. He offers forgiveness. He will take the penalty if you want. But it's your choice.